Welcome to this podcast. It's making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 164. You know, today's guests from hit films Fletch, Tombstone, Fast Food Nation, and Parkland, and such TV shows as Friday Night Lights, Nashville, All My Children. And of course, she played Jerry's girlfriend, Shelly, in the season 6 episode of Seinfeld, The Doodle. Please welcome Dana Wheeler-Nicholson. Dana, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have a true New Yorker on the show, Dana. So take us back. It's only been 28 years since the Doodle. It was April of '95, season 6. So pretty much Seinfeld in its prime. Yeah. Tell us a little bit how the role Shelly came about. Was there an audition process? Did you know someone? Give us a little insight into how that role came about.
Well, I had to sleep with Jerry. Yeah. No. I had a fabulous agent who, it was an audition. It was just a regular old audition. And I went in there and I have this memory of it. I was racking my brain trying to figure this out. It's possible that I had my sides, which are the scenes that you have to read. It's possible that I may have taped them together in a long, sort of like a scroll from, ye old times where it's together, not like a book, but a long strip. And I feel like I had pasted my pages together that way. So when I was doing the audition, Jerry was in the room and I was kind of flipping the pages around. It was a bad idea. And suddenly I was like flop sweating and the pages were making a lot of noise and moving. And he, for some reason, found that really funny. And I think it was just a funny audition and we got on and it was boom bang and it was suddenly my job. So but I do remember a lot of paper flying around. I think I'd seen an interview with Sean Penn at the time, who said he would tape his scenes together a certain way, and I thought, well, if Sean Penn can do this, I'm going to do it, and
Yeah, I'm sure. I think maybe the spontaneity of that maybe struck Jerry too, or something. Maybe it helped ease, lighten the mood or something. Very cool. And then so we were obviously, rewatched the episode 100 times, but just wanted to watch it one more time before talking to you. And what sticks out to me about your first scene there when you're having dinner with Jerry and George on like a double date there, and when George tells Jerry about the pecan, he just spits it out. And I have to imagine that, I don't know if that was the first take or what, but I would guess that must have been a fun scene to shoot, just with Jerry and George kind of bantering back and forth. And then the spit take Jerry does really delivers. And I feel like being there at that time, season 6 of Seinfeld, it's hitting all cylinders. You must have been just enjoying working in that scene. What do you remember about actual shooting that scene or that day, that first day?
I remember there's my dog just came in. I remember the spit take was not a one shot thing, because he had to get it right. And so there was quite a bit of that. But also the other woman in the scene, Krista Miller, is an hilarious person. And so we were, the thing about the show is that, yes, everybody's so funny. Yes, it was fun to be there, but everybody was working hard. And that was the thing that struck me, was that everybody was kind of serious, as we were working. It was a little less lighthearted than maybe I thought it might be, and not that it was stiff or bad or negative or anything. It was just everybody was working really hard, and so it was technical stuff. It was the spit had to happen. It had to work. It had to be funny. All the things that comedians have to manage and make it look like it's just happening and hilarious. It's actually quite a lot of work. So I remember it was relaxed, but also everybody was working.
Yeah, and that your face looking so annoyed. I mean, I guess that's a lot of women in my life. I get that look, so I get it. So maybe there wasn't too much acting going on there, but brilliant stuff. And you mentioned Krista Miller. It was actually her second time on Seinfeld. She played a different character. I don't know. Was she kind of your go-to that week? Did you build any friendships either with
Yes.
the cast or with her?
Yes, with her, we became actually great friends for a long, long time and just sort of lost touch, as life goes on. And I sang at her wedding, and
Oh, wow.
we were friends for a long time. And life intervenes, and we're not in touch so much now. But yeah, we had a great time together on that set. Yeah, so we formed a really great bond that week, and I think it was intimidating being on the set for me. I won't obviously speak for her, but I was intimidated. It was a high-powered thing was happening. They knew it. There's a lot of pressure in a way. It was the first time I had been at a table read with that much pressure. All the execs come down. Everybody's around the table, and if you're not funny or if they're not, you get fired in that table read potentially. It was a little more stressful than I knew. I don't think I'd done a sitcom before. So, and it was Jerry, so and so yeah, she and I bonded because we were both, I think, a little bit scared.
Yeah, and as Chris mentioned at the top, we were talking about it before we came on. You're a native New Yorker through and through. Grew up there, college there, the whole thing. And this was season 6 of Seinfeld. So, like you just mentioned, they were established. So, is it safe to say you were a fan of the show, or just as an actress, just knew it was a big show and let me get out? What was the pressure or that kind of professionalism you're talking about, or that pressure you're talking about, because of how big the show was, and you were also a fan, or was it mainly just because this is Seinfeld, 30 million people are watching, let's not get this wrong? Were you tuned into the show, throughout the first couple, 5 seasons or so before you got the role?
I had not seen the show. I was a little snotty about TV at the time. Which I'm going to hell for, but because I love doing TV more than anything, and that might have been the beginning of that track. I think I was a snotty little actress who was like, "Oh, all right, I'll read for the sitcom." I don't know. I have no idea what my excuse is, but I think I was not super into the show. I don't know that I'd ever watched it. I knew it was a big, giant show, and my agent screamed at me when I was like, I don't know, maybe. I lost my hearing in one ear, but yeah, so.
Yeah, and to your point, the New York City roots, we love that, and obviously Krista Miller, it seemed like she was a nice sounding board that week. What do you remember? I mean, we know him now, right, on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Was there any interaction with Larry David? Was he at the audition? Obviously, it sounds like he was at the table read. What kind of presence did Larry have?
Well, he was around for sure, and I just really had the most, maybe chatting in between scenes, maybe some chatting. But again, they were really focused on the funny. They were just focused on the funny and, the bits. And it wasn't like, for me, it wasn't super chatty. Maybe that was me. I'm not super chatty on set. So, but yeah, he was definitely around, and Brad was there, and yeah, he was around.
Yeah, we've heard it was very business-like, as opposed to, like the cheer at the time. Cheers, they're kind of having a blast, having fun. Not saying these guys weren't having fun, but I think it was just a smaller knit group, right? Jerry and Larry kind of running everything. But yeah, you mentioned Brad, Jason. Was there any, I know obviously with Chevy Chase, the relationship, like with Julia Louis-Dreyfus or anybody from the old SNL crew? I was just wondering if was there any interaction with any of the main 4 outside of Jerry that you dealt with?
Not really. This has got to be the most boring interview you have.
No, it's all good.
Because I don't tend to, I'm a sort of socially, I have a lot of social anxiety. So when I'm on set, I keep to myself a lot, which isn't great because people think I'm incredibly snotty and, and stuff, which I'm not. I'm just terrified. And so I don't think I was super, engaged, just except for trying to get the scenes. If memory serves, it would probably be better to ask someone else who was witnessing. The way I felt was that, no, I didn't really have much interaction except what was happening in the scene. I don't think Julia was that interested in me.
It was your scene with Krista Miller that led to you singing at her wedding, right? So obviously something was born there.
Well, no, at Krista's wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, she and I definitely had a great connection, yeah. But I think Julia and everybody, they were really, really in the thick of it. I mean, the show was this behemoth. I mean, it was just this juggernaut. And I think they were all kind of like in the thick of it, really focused and not really that interested in chatting, for me, or maybe it was just me. I don't know, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there was season 6 at that point. They're professionals. It's a well-oiled machine. They're there to do a job. So it probably, and also there's a lot of guest stars on that show. I mean, you had Newman, you had the parents, you had Uncle Leo, you had yourself and Krista. So there's probably a lot going on there as well. And you had mentioned this was one of your first sitcoms, if not the first sitcom. I mean, looking at your IMDb and things, it looks like it was your first sitcom as far as, I don't know how accurate that is, but yeah, it looks like it probably was your first sitcom. Obviously, you broke on the scene with Fletch, which is, an all-time classic, and then obviously one of our favorite films. And I'm wondering if, even after Fletch, you did, Tombstone and a bunch of other movies that, was that was your trajectory. And then, like you said, the Seinfeld thing kind of led you more towards the TV. And you touched on this, but I'm curious, all those shows, you did a ton of shows, especially, the Single Guy, Sex and the City, and all those kind of like bigger shows in that 90s era. What was like the Seinfeld experience, different about those other shows maybe, or what did you kind of take from Seinfeld? Whether it was Larry or Andy Ackerman or Jerry, because a lot of these shows, they have egos, and from what we've heard, Seinfeld didn't. But I don't know, from your perspective, what was your kind of take on that aspect of it?
Yeah, no, he was great, and what I learned there, not only there, but I definitely watching him, the vibe of the show kind of comes from the top down, and he was great. He was relaxed and present and engaged in each scene, and I would say he was really comfortable and really available, and definitely the centerpiece. I guess I learned, when I say I didn't do sitcoms, I actually did a sitcom almost out of the gate after Fletch, but it was a sitcom that David Milch did after Hill Street Blues called Beverly Hills Bunts, which was a spinoff of Hill Street Blues. And I did 13 episodes of that, and that was a sitcom, but it was Milch, and so it was a much crazier, much more realistic show. So I guess in my mind, it wasn't really so much a sitcom, even though that was the format in a way. But it was live. It wasn't on a stage. It was a half-hour, film show. So it felt different. But I guess with Seinfeld, it opened the door. I wanted to only do TV after that. I loved it. I mean, I just loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of the immediacy of it, right? I mean, it's on Thursday night, 30 million people are watching. Like, so I guess, what was that Friday like for you? You saw it, like, obviously it was a huge show. Tony mentioned the Seinfelds are on, Newman. It was like season 6, probably, I think it was the third or fourth, the last episode of that season. it had to be a big deal and probably opened more doors, I guess, in television for you. What do you remember about that time? Did you, obviously you said you didn't watch Seinfeld, but clearly it was obviously the number one show on TV. So you must have got a lot of phone calls from buddies and people back home.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Everybody loved the show. Everybody was watching it except me. I married someone who had never seen the show until COVID. So I don't know what's wrong with us, but so yeah, it was exciting for lots of people. I didn't realize how it was one of the only other times that I got such a huge response was doing All My Children, the soap, which I did for 6 months or something.
We see that a lot. There's a cult. There's a
cult following.
Following between soap, Star Trek, and Seinfeld like we've never seen.
I had never experienced it. Never. I mean, I don't have I live a very quiet life. That was crazy. I felt like, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, but that Seinfeld was definitely a big splash. I mean, lots of people watched the show and saw me, and that was big. It was big. I tend to stay a little under the radar in general.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because we touched on the Fletch thing, but I mean, Fletch is a huge movie, and you were at the forefront of it. Obviously, we all remember that well. We'd be remiss if we didn't ask about shooting that, or if you have any stories you can share. Just because it's just one of the all time greats, with Chevy, and maybe you had like a story or two to share. The tennis scene, or steak sandwich. I don't know. There has to be something that you can remember for our audience, maybe.
Well, I had to sleep with Chevy. No, I like that joke. So yeah, I was, first of all, a child. I was 22 or 3 years old when that happened. I was in the middle of college and got kind of scooped out of school and my life to go to LA. And so yeah, I mean, that was another, like, in the room with the producers and Michael Ritchie, the director, and Chevy. And just really, he made me laugh really hard. I made him laugh really hard. And I had the job. And in those days, it was, you could kind of come out of nowhere in a way. I basically lied my way into an audition and got a huge agent the next day, and then was auditioning for big movies and stuff. Wow. And I don't know if that happens anymore. I really don't know what happens now, what kids do these days. But at the time, I could just be nobody in college at Sarah Lawrence and lie my way into an audition and have a huge agent the next day, and then be doing a big movie. So I was really green. Michael Ritchie, the director, and Chevy were incredibly kind and took really good care of me. Again, it was about Chevy wanted, I think, very much to be acting in this movie too. He was wanting to not just have it be a comedy where he was just being a goofball, which, he was, and he's hilarious, but he wanted some acting. He wanted to do a good job as an actor. So that was interesting. And Tim Matheson is so wonderful. And, so they had a good time during those scenes too. And, I was just very young and very green and wide open. And like, what you see in that movie with me is that I didn't know any better to be nervous or self-conscious or in my head. I was just fully present and responding to these fantastic actors and comedians, I'm just laughing and talking and being in the moment. That was all I knew. I didn't really have a skill set at that point. So it was, a lot of fun. It was a lot.
You kind of stole my question there. I was going to say Fletch was 10 years prior to Seinfeld. You mentioned some of the I don't know, nerves a little bit on the Seinfeld set? Was it just you were just 22 and green, like you said, so you just kind of went in with just an open mind, and boy, did you hit it out of the park. But was that kind of the mindset? And then I guess as the years went on, you kind of learned more about, I guess, you mentioned the dirty side of the business, right? Like you can go to a read and they can fire you, right? So maybe there was a little bit, you know, more edge to you in the later years versus that, you know, opening scene with you and Fletch, right?
I waltzed into a casting office in the Coca-Cola building on Fifth Avenue in between my Greek and Roman history class. I, did my thing. And the next day I had an agent and almost immediately had big jobs in big movies. I just thought, wow, this is easy. I had no idea what I was walking into. I was not ready. I didn't have any skills. I was just completely I'm finger quoting for those of you listening, a natural. I realized soon after that I had to get, some skills and figure out how to actually, act. So I did that, but with that, as you're saying, comes more self-consciousness, more when you're starting to have some kind of method or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of, then it becomes more work than just having fun and being natural and being in the moment, though that is key also always. But you do have to figure out how to sustain and how to have a real what's the word I'm trying to say? And I teach acting, and I can't come up with the word. A scope, range. That's the word.
Right.
I'm thinking. Boy, God, a range.
Right.
So
yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely evident that you have range. Just looking over, your career has been incredible. We were wondering, we were doing some research before the show. Is it your grandfather, right, or is it your grandfather? He founded DC Comics, or he was definitely at the beginning of comics. Is that a true story? Malcolm.
Yeah, the major Malcolm.
Yeah. With Jerry's connection to comics and Superman, we were curious if he knew about this. If you had any discussions with him around that, or like if he inquired to you, or if that came up at all. It's an interesting story and background. And then Jerry was always Jerry's a big comic book guy, but comic books that brought up a lot on the show, and then he's a big Superman guy, and it was always interesting when we saw that connection. I thought, just bring it up and see if there was anything there where Jerry may have talked to you about it, but it sounds like no. But still, I mean, it is a.
That's funny. No, I don't remember that, but I wish I had known that or been aware. My grandfather founded DC Comics and also just basically created comic books. They didn't exist before there were comic strips. He put them into book form and had artists. He conceptualized paying artists to do a monthly thing, and Detective Comics was the first. Well, New Fun Comics was the first, and Detective Comics became DC. And but he was bought out. He was sort of run out of the business and really early on. Like he got sort of kicked out like in 1939. So he's sort of like the founder, the creator, but and didn't really. He died sort of unknown and penniless. And DC did really well. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're doing quite well.
Yeah. Well, exactly. All thanks to your grandfather, and clearly incredible career. And you mentioned that moment when you in between classes when you tried out for Fletch. I mean, New York City girl, right, through and through. Was that always part of the plan? You mentioned your grandfather doing comics. Did you always want to be an actress? Like, was that the thing you wanted to be? Because you didn't mention, you mentioned classes that weren't acting classes. So I'm just curious, As a little girl, what was the aspiration? You're clearly teaching it now, and you've done an incredible job. But early on, what were the goals?
When I was little, I wanted to be a singer, and also I wanted to design costumes and clothing. And I ended up in art school because I was a sort of a young artist, always went to art schools. I ended up at Parsons School of Design in New York City, and I did my foundation year and then a year in the fashion. You do your foundation year, which everybody does the same thing, and then you go into your specialty. And I went into the illustration and fashion. So it was always going to be illustrating, fashion, costume design. That was from a little girl and a singer. I had no interest in acting. I was, like I say, extremely shy and to like a ridiculous degree. And so, no, acting was not even, I could barely even talk to anyone. So that changed one summer in New York. I was in the city for the summer. I was like 2 waitressing jobs, taking art classes. And I decided to take an acting class at this studio called HP Studios, just for fun, because I was so shy, so painfully shy, that I thought, well, maybe this will help me just be in front of people and be able to speak for whatever reason, I don't know. And I ended up in an acting class, and I loved it. And the teacher, this old theater dude, was incredibly encouraging and said, you should maybe think about this. And I then did think about it, and I took the summer, and then I transferred to Sarah Lawrence, which had a really good theater department. And I just took some theater classes, but I got hired before I finished school. So I never finished school. I just started working.
We got to get you back to that degree.
Yeah, that was fun. Cool.
You mentioned your husband has not watched Seinfeld until recently. Well, curious his take specifically on your scene with the pecans or whatever the nuts are. What is the etiquette there? Would he have eaten the thing like that Jerry spit out?
No,
that had to come up.
No, he wouldn't. And no. And we've almost had this fight. We've almost done that whole scene without him really knowing that it came up. No, he's ridiculous. He's ridiculous. It's very similar. It's like, but sweetie, we kiss. Like, I don't know, Yeah, no, we've
Jerry
out in one way or another.
Jerry, the character, yes, very, very anal. He wouldn't even do the toothbrush, the whole thing. I mean,
no way. I'm with Jerry and your husband. No way.
I'll do whatever. But yeah, I mean, so Krista Miller, I got to. What song did you sing at her wedding? Do you remember?
Let me think. It might have been Someone to Watch Over Me, the Cole Porter song, maybe. That's a good question. I'd have to ask her, but I think it was a Cole Porter sort of thing. I was singing a lot of jazz then in the city, so I'm gonna go with that.
And did you and Krista attend the Seinfeld rap party? Those are usually kind of a big deal. I'm just curious if you guys attended that year. Again, it was only 28 years ago.
I probably did not, I do know myself well enough to know that I probably didn't. She probably did, because she figured it all out, and I stayed home. So I don't remember if I did or I didn't. Maybe, my agent might have dragged me. My agent may have dragged me, and I was probably miserable and stayed for 10 minutes and then ran home.
You got to keep up appearances, But it sounds like, so your husband caught up you didn't watch prior, or are you a fan now of Seinfeld? Obviously, ever since you were on the show.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, we watch it, still every day. He's now the biggest fan. He's like, I can't believe I never saw this. I'm such an idiot.
Well, it's funny too because you're a native New Yorker, and everyone said how New York the show was, and it's only for New Yorkers. And you said he's from out west of Montana, so maybe it made sense for him to not have gotten into it. But for neither of you, then you both come together and catch up with our podcast. You can watch it as you're watching new episodes of the show and follow along.
But so you guys, so you just get people randomly. You're not doing this in order in any way. You just find people from the show randomly and do right. Because
we're 200 episodes in. We've spoken to over hundreds of actors, actresses, writers, producers. Mark Hirschfeld, casting director, you name it. We got the hair lady. We're trying to chronicle this show. Your hair was great in that episode. I remember.
Yes, it was. I remember that.
Did you do that, or did they?
Oh no, that was the hair lady, aforementioned hair lady. No, I that.
Well, it's funny. She'll tell you. Believe it or not, she spent more time on George Costanza's.
Yes, she was very friendly with Jason, though. She was like Jason's personal hairdresser.
Well, it's like. Well, yeah, but it's like in Tombstone, I like to tell this story about Tombstone, which was that, not to get off subject, but that the women, because we were in period costume, hair, wool, 1800s clothing, the women would be done in like this. The men with their mustaches and everything took forever in the makeup and hair trailer. It was ridiculous. We'd be done and like dancing to Motown and waiting for them, and they'd all be kind of like waxing their mustaches, taking forever. It was ridiculous. So I understand that maybe his hair was taking a lot longer. Men are like, women have a bad rap about that stuff. Men are ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible movie, and it must have been fun to do that period piece type stuff, right? With everyone kind of in those outfits, and like you said, that's one of those that I'll just can watch that movie 100 times. It's so good.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, Dana. I mean, you've been a part of. I mean, geez, right? Iconic things from Fletch, Tombstone, Friday Night Lights, one of my personal favorites of all time. Buddy Garrity, the whole thing.
Yeah,
and then obviously our favorite. Seinfeld, what a career, and we're so honored that you joined us, and it's so great that you're paying it forward and now teaching. It's a great gift. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Sorry to have been cagey, but I'm not. Thank you for having me.
You're great. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Dana.
Hey.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.